Alright. What do we have here? This is me. I never thought I would have priority. The GMTK Jam was really a reality check. Okay. These are from the official channel. I went. Okay, let's watch this.
Last year, I participated in the GMTK Game Jam
Cool.
with my submission Blueprint Bob, and I won. So this year, I participated again, and I wanted to try and repeat last year's success. But that would prove to be a lot harder than I thought.
It was mentioned.
I haven't been working on anything else than Blueprint Bob for the past year, and it's finally coming out in a week, so it would be hugely appreciated if you would go on wishlist and maybe even buy it if you're watching this video a week from now. We made sure to finish most of what had to be done for Blueprint Bob before this year's GMTK started, so we could actually focus on the jam. This was my 6th time participating in the jam, and of course nice. I wasn't all alone. The team this time was made up of programmer Sumpmolk, very talented musician Dave Stam,
is this the
and artist Devon Animation. All very talented people, so I was confident that we had the potential to win. The theme this year was Loop, which was the train surprise since the themes are usually a sentence. Having to work with just one word was definitely a bit more challenging than usual. We started Wednesday evening by just brainstorming ideas on a board, and after about 3 hours we had all of our ideas written down. So we went through them all and voted on the ones we liked.
With the buffaloes
that stuck with us the most was having a train on the track that goes round and round. The train can't stop, and you have to repair the track because the train is damaging it and will crash if you don't repair it. It sounds pretty dumb now explaining it back to you guys, so maybe I shouldn't be too surprised that we didn't do too well this year, but that is what we went with, and we started working immediately Wednesday evening, although it was pretty late and we didn't get too far. Some, but not all of us had work next Thursday and also on Friday, so we had most of the time on the weekend. I definitely like that they gave us the 2 extra days before the weekend this year instead of after the weekend. It felt like we could take advantage of it a lot better than last year. On Thursday, we added resources that the workers could gather so you can actually repair the track. We also added a bandit that could catch workers and a cliff that you could jump off of. This was also the first time ever that we've had sound effects on day 1, which was amazing. The graphics started rolling in on Friday, day 2. We added upgrades to the shop, and before we knew it, it actually started looking and sounding like a real game. On day 3, the animation started rolling in, and I spent most of the day trying to make a tutorial that would make sense since the game was getting kind of complicated at this point. The last day was the most stressful day of GMTK game jamming I've ever done. We had way too many mechanics, which introduced way too many bugs. The game was complicated, hard to explain, and trying to balance it was even worse. About 2 hours before the jam ended, we realized that the game was way too easy. You could go infinite, never die, and we made the big mistake of overcorrecting and making it way too hard when we actually finished the game. I believe this is one of the main reasons why we didn't do too well this year. People just don't like losing. It's not fun to lose, and they especially don't like losing and not understanding how to improve. And I thought we learned this from previous years, but apparently not. We made the same mistake we've made before, and it showed in the results. The voting period for the jam has ended. Huge props to Adam and Devon, they absolutely crushed it. Me and Supermark have never made a game jam game that has higher audio and visuals ranking than enjoyment ranking, so really a round of applause for Adam and Devon. Links to their socials in the description. Even though we didn't win, it was a lot of fun doing the jam this year. I'm not a huge fan of the changes Mark made to the voting system and no longer having 20 winners in his video, but what can I do? It's his decision, his jam. I'm probably still gonna join it every year. And who knows, maybe one year I'll win the enjoyment category. The only category that matters. Don't tell the musicians and artists. Anyways, Blueprint Bob is releasing in just 4 days. Oh my god.
Cool.
Best game ever made. There will, as usual, be a 1-month earnings report on the channel, so subscribe if you want to see that. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.
Oh yeah, I searched for the game. Seahorse something.
The GMTK.
But I didn't find it with that name. That's why I didn't put it on my Let's Play. I'm a roller coaster, right? Let me grab something to drink first.
Last weekend, the annual GMTK Game Jam took place, and I decided to take a few days off to give it a shot. This year's topic was loop. Only a single word, as usual, pretty vague to allow for maximum creativity. The topic was announced on Wednesday evening, my time, so I started brainstorming Thursday morning. I began writing down some of the obvious loop-related ideas that came to my mind, but I quickly landed on the topic of splines, since I'd just been working on trains for my game Small Town Architect. Trains usually don't run in a loop though, so what's similar to trains?
There was a lot
looping?
of trains.
Well, roller coasters of course. In Roller Coaster Tycoon I always loved to build my own coasters as a kid. The challenge of building a coaster that respects the laws of physics and smoothly loops back to the start was really fun. The only negative thing I remember is that the building tool was a little clunky and not very interactive. So let's create a fun and easy to use roller coaster builder and turn it into a puzzle game. My idea was to add checkpoints which the coaster has to collect before looping back to the beginning. The challenge is to build a coaster that collects all these checkpoints as efficiently as possible. On top of that, the player needs to be mindful about forces, or the coaster will derail and crash. I really liked the concept and was confident I could pull it off in a few days, so off to work. There were two main technical challenges with this concept, both of which could derail the project: the building tool and the roller coaster physics. I started with the building tool because, thanks to the train system I made for my city builder, I had a good amount of experience with splines and modifying them at runtime. I could also take a few bits of code to use as a starting point. The unique thing about my building tool is that you can freely draw the path on your terrain. For roller coasters we of course also need some height variation, so I added a way to adjust the height of individual spline knots using the mouse wheel. I also added a way to easily adjust your spline by inserting new knots with drag and drop. The tracks are generated along the spline using the asset Spline Mesher, which turned out to be a pretty big performance issue, but I kind of managed to work around it. Other than that, I was pretty satisfied with my coaster building system and went on with the other big one, the physics. In Unity, the easiest way to move an object along a spline is to use the spline animate component, which just linearly interpolates the object along the path. This is fine, but definitely not an accurate representation of a roller coaster. We need physics in some way. Simply adding a rigid body to our train isn't going to cut it, though. It doesn't know anything about our spline after all. So the first thing I tried was to use a rigid body, but still manually set the position to the nearest location on the spline in each frame. And that simple solution actually worked surprisingly well. The train did accelerate. After playing around with the different values though, I quickly realized that this solution might be a dead end. After my realization, I dug deep into real-world roller coaster physics, or let's be honest, I probably only dipped my toes, but still I tried to understand the different forces that acted on a coaster and how I might implement this in my code. There is the centripetal force, the normal force, which keeps the coaster on track, and of course gravity pulling down. And what about friction, air resistance? Well, long story short, I ditched all physics and rigid bodies and rewrote a custom solution, which actually is more often than not what you should do when dealing with non-standard physics or movement systems in games. You don't want something that's realistic, you want something that looks and feels good. Even more than that, I am in a game jam after all, so what the hell am I doing? In the end, I managed to create a fairly simple but good enough physics system using a few lines of custom physics logic. I also managed to detect derailing, upon which I disable my custom physics and hand the control over to regular rigid body physics, which then take care of thrusting the train cars into the air and ground. Pretty fun stuff. Yeah. Finally, I added a few more cars to my roller coaster train. I used joints to tie them to my main car and use a script to keep them aligned to the track. Aside from a bit of jankiness here and there, this simple solution again worked pretty fine. On Sunday morning, with only one day left, I finally started with the visuals. I wanted to go for a clean and minimalist look that I could pull off in just 1 or 2 hours. The central element of each level was going to be this small piece of terrain. I drew a very simple grass and cliff texture and added the microsplat asset to automatically texture cliffs based on the slope. This saved a lot of time when creating the terrains for different levels. Other than that, the only 3D assets I needed were the train car and the piece of roller coaster track. Then, out of curiosity, I tried an outline post-processing effect, which I once used on some other project in the past, and I was actually really happy with the result. This effect is not very flexible and can easily mess up your look pretty badly, but in my case, I feel like it instantly adds a strong visual identity, basically for free. To have at least one decorative element, I also added this tree model, which looked really cool in combination with the new outline effect. Finally, I designed some UI that kind of matches the new look, but I also tried to keep things as minimalist as possible. It was Sunday early afternoon and I was sitting here with a single level, so finally I decided to spend some time on level design and create 5 levels with rising difficulty and a few different challenges. I also quickly added one last feature, a coaster elevator, to have some variation from the usual launch start. I couldn't afford to spend any time on playtesting, but luckily, thanks to the game's open, sandboxy nature, the levels almost designed themselves. To wrap things up, I spent some time on sound design, and thank God I had already composed a little background music on Saturday morning when I needed a quick break from coding. Pretty much last minute, I realized I needed a bit of tutorial because the controls weren't exactly obvious, so I hacked together something which might be the worst code I've written in years, but it got the work done. Because I needed to go somewhere, my own deadline was actually a few hours before the actual end of the jam. Later I learned the end was pushed back an hour because of itch.io server issues. Not surprising considering the absolutely crazy number of entries this year. In any case, I managed to submit a working game, and to be honest, I'm actually really happy with it. The few people who've had a chance to play it had a lot of fun, and myself, I also had a lot of fun when I finally had the time to play it after the jam. What I like about the game is that there are practically infinite solutions for each level, so it's really fun to watch people come up with their own. If you want to give it a shot as well, the link is in the description.
Poster
And
Architects.
if you want to give the game a rating for the jam, I'd also really appreciate it. Thanks for watching. Cheers.
Ah, that was nice. Ah, here. So this I made mining game. 11 months. Okay, this is 2024. Minecraft Making a very sad game in 4 days. Damn.
So it is likely that by the time I'm uploading this video, the GMTK 2025 Game Jam has just ended a few hours ago. It was my first time participating in such a massive jam, and all I really knew was that it was one of the most popular ones out there. We're talking over 37,000 participants and almost 10k game submissions. Now here is where things get interesting. So if you go to the game submission page and sort the games by most recently submitted, you will see mine right there. Submitted just 4 seconds before the deadline. Yeah, just 4 seconds. But before I get into how I ended up in that situation, let me first introduce you to the game I made. So this year's theme was Loop, and to be honest, I wasn't super inspired by that at first. Definitely not as much as I was during the last game jam I joined. But after about an hour and a half of brainstorming, I landed on a concept that I really liked. So this time I wanted to focus on a narrative-driven experience rather than a gameplay mechanic. I've always wanted to create games with emotional, story-rich content, and this jam felt like the perfect opportunity for me to try that again. So what's the game about? The best way I can describe it is it's an emotional narrative driven experience about the loop of life, memory and acceptance. You play as a girl visiting her aging mother in a metaphorical hospital. With every visit, the mother drifts back into memories, reliving fragments of a life she once lived. Each loop takes the player deeper into themes like grief, memory and more. Like I mentioned earlier, the focus was heavily on the story. I wanted you to feel like you're watching everything unfold from above, almost like reading a book. A lot of players mentioned that the game reminded them of Monument Valley, especially with the architecture and perspective, but actually my inspiration came from a short game I played a few months ago called Imperium. It really stuck with me and its minimal top-down style inspired me to do something similar for It Goes On. Now, let's talk about how the game was made. Since the jam lasted only 4 days, I had to move quickly. I didn't go through a prototyping phase, instead I jumped straight into writing modular code. Every line I wrote had to be flexible enough to support additional features later, without needing to rewrite anything from scratch. For example, I created a dialogue script that I could attach to any trigger object. All I had to do was tweak a few component variables, like the dialogue lines, whether it's the last dialogue in the scene, and so on. I followed the same approach with player interactions. For things like doors, I used a change sequence script that handles transitions. Again, I just adjusted the variables depending on the situation. This modular approach helped me save a lot of time. As for the 3D modeling, I would say around 90% of the assets were made by me, like the building, hospital room, and various props. The only things I downloaded were the trees, plants, and character models, just to save time. That said, I still retextured everything by hand to match the visual style I had in mind. As you can see, there is nothing complex about the textures, just simple flat colors, but what really brought the scenes to life was the light baking. It added this ambient occlusion effect that gave the environment more depth and atmosphere. So now, let me tell you how I ended up submitting my game just 4 seconds before the deadline, and how I got myself into that mess. When I started this project, I honestly had no idea what was ahead of me. I made a to-do list and started tackling tasks one by one. Things were going smoothly until the final day. The submission deadline was at 1 p.m. in my time zone, and I woke up at 9 a.m. that morning. After pulling an all-nighter the night before, I had about 4 hours of sleep max. As soon as I woke up, I realized there were several things I didn't consider to add in my to-do list. More dialogue needed to be added, the main menu was missing, there were no sounds, and I hadn't even started on the game page, so I jumped right into it. I was jumping through tasks when suddenly I checked the clock. It was already 12 p.m. and I still had to make a game cover, add sounds, and write the game description. About 40 minutes later, I finally had everything in place. I hoped that the game was functional and I started building the project. At that point, I had about 20 minutes left to build the game, make the game page, and submit it. And that's when the unexpected happened. The build kept throwing errors and then my computer crashed. Apparently my 32 gig of RAM just wasn't enough to handle the terrain in my scenes. I honestly thought it was over. I was panicking so hard and I had no backup plan. That's when I saw an announcement where they were extending the deadline by 1 hour due to server issues. That gave me a second win. I pulled myself together, I fixed the build, rebuilt the game, and finally submitted it. 4 seconds before the new deadline. So yeah, that was a journey. Anyway, I just wanted to share my GMTK 2025 jam experience with you all, and if there is one thing I want you to learn, and this is a reminder to future me as well, jam time is not the actual jam time. It's jam time minus 1 day, because you never know what's going to go wrong. So yeah guys, I hope that you enjoyed watching watching this video, I'm actually trying a new style where I don't go too much
Y ya
into
viene el de
development details.
Braquis.
So if you've made it this far, why not give my game a try? It's free, under 100 megabytes, and you can finish it in less than 15 minutes. Have fun.
Para llorar. Okay. I made a game. Devlogs. Oh. Let's go. 18 minutos. Está largo tu video, güey. Siento, pero va a brincar pedacitos.
Days working on a brand new game for the Game Maker's Toolkit Game Jam. The theme this year was Loop, and I've been so excited to make a game again ever since I entered the competition last year. For those of you that don't know, it's a competition where you're given 4 days in order to make a game that fits the theme, and this is the game that I ended up creating. Obviously, it's not perfect, and there's a lot of things I would have liked to have done differently, but over the past 4 days, I really feel like I've learnt a lot.
Que era
So
encerrar
let's
los
take a
enemigos
look
y...
at that development journey and my descent into madness as the days went on.
Welcome to GMTK Game Jam 2025.
This is
This is a crazy fast game-making marathon
Where you have just 4 days to make a game that fits a theme. And this year's theme is just one word. Loop.
So we had the theme, Loop. I grabbed my game dev notebook and I started coming up with some ideas. None of those ideas would carry forward to the first
Que la
proper
madre.
day of development because I tried a few experiments and the game just was not coming together at all. So I think I've came up with a good idea. I can't quite picture how it's going to work as a game just yet, but I was basically coming up with a mashup of several different games that use loops in their gameplay. So Nights into Dreams was an obvious first choice because you use the loop to spin around and capture the enemies. I was also thinking about Line Rider, the way you can make the course and have loops and have something actually moving down around the loops. And then I was kind of thinking, like, what sort of style do I want this in? What sort of graphics? Maybe something like Mischief Makers, like a really cartoony kind of 2.5D style with the sort of level with the different pegs on them. And then thinking of pegs made me think a little bit of Peggle. So using all of those different games as an idea, as a concept, I've come up with this, which is like a level full of pegs. Kind of also reminds me of the Donkey Kong minigame from Nintendo Land, but you'll control a little character, maybe a fairy or something, like Nights into Dreams, that flies around. You can pick up ribbon and use it to tie it around the pegs by drawing loops. That's where the Line Rider idea comes in. So you'll build the ribbon around the course, something will drop onto the course and you have to get it to a certain point in the stage. I think it's going to be like a level by level puzzle game with maybe rope physics, the way that you can pull the different strands of ribbon to lay the levels out. And I was thinking maybe because it's ribbon, the enemies can be like flying pairs of scissors that come down and cut the ribbon. And to kill the enemies, just like in Nights into Dreams, you actually have to circle around them. So you have to drop what you're doing and fly up and circle around them. And then that will make them disappear from the stage and you can get back to actually... Way carried away with the concept for the game, and today and a bit of last night I actually ended up completely remaking all of my ideas for the game. So here's some of the ideas from yesterday. I'll go over some of what those were and you can have a look at some of the first gameplay, but it was going to be way too complicated to turn into anything playable in just 4 days. So I've simplified it a lot. In fact, I oversimplified it. This was another one of my ideas last night, which is basically just circling enemies, but then I thought, what is there to do after that? There isn't really anything. So I actually got the help of my fiancée Sarah and we sat down and fleshed out some more ideas, and now the game looks more like this. So there's a bunch of things to collect in the level. I'm just working now on getting a area 2D and it's going to have this like witches and wizards fantasy theme, and hopefully it's going to be really fun to play. The demo is kind of playable. It's probably not going to look anything like this in a few days' time, but I'm really excited to keep at it. And I was so excited to do this game jam and to get back into game development again that I actually booked the Thursday and Friday off work so I could have 2 full days of concentrating just on game dev. So I woke up early and treated it as if it was my job, and honestly, even though I really struggled with the actual development, just doing that and being able to focus entirely for 4 days on one thing was such a great opportunity, and I really feel like I've learnt a lot with the game engine. And I was also using this time not just to make a finished product, but to actually understand the engine. And but I kind of cheated in that one because I just used a built-in character controller and didn't really program anything for myself outside of just the ladder and the blocks falling. So I really wanted to go at this game from scratch and actually figure out everything as I went along. And I feel like I did learn a lot. And here's how the game looked at the end of day 2. Not really a game as such, but the concept was there and it was playable. Nearly halfway through the competition though, and there's still a lot more left to do. So let's see how day 3 went next. Good morning everyone, it's day 3 of the GMTK Game Jam, and I've got a list of things that I need to do today in order to get the game into a playable state with a start, a finish, and some actual challenge in there as well. I was really struggling yesterday to try and get the enemy movements working, and that actually took up most of the day, so I haven't made as much progress as I would have liked, but here's a look at how the game looked at the end of yesterday. And today I've got a list of things here. So first I'm going to start with a door that can open when you deposit a certain amount of material. So that's step 1. And there's also going to be a cauldron in the corner of the level that you can also put material into in order to spawn a boss. So that's the second thing I'll be working on. I also need to reduce the enemy projectiles a bit and make it a little bit easier because there are way too many at the minute. So there's that. There's a meter that fills up when you collect the cards.
Y ahora sí es una brujita.
Use, and then when you hold the button down, that meter will drain.
¿Para qué sirven? Gold, fire, water.
That's the plan for today. First things first, I'm going to make a door that opens when you go into the door with a certain amount of material. So wish me luck. While I was struggling to figure out how to make some of these gameplay mechanics a reality, I stumbled across a really useful video that actually details the exact purpose of every single node in the game engine. So if anyone's considering checking out Godot for yourselves, I really recommend starting with this video first before you go into the engine, because it really gives you a good understanding of what's possible in the engine as a whole, and then you can kind of narrow down the bits that you want to actually work on. So for example, in my game, the way you draw the loops around the enemies is actually made using the Line 2D node. So most of this day was spent figuring out how the tile set works and how I could actually build the stage and actually advance through the level. And I also figured out how animations work as well, which was very confusing. The way you link the nodes and the signals is still kind of messy in my mind, but I did end up writing down how to do that, and now I can actually make sprites animate on command, which I'm very happy about, because that was one thing that I really didn't understand before starting this. Hey everyone, it's Saturday, and that means there's just one more full day left and then half a day on Sunday to get this game finished. I've just got out of the shower and I'm ready to sit down and get back to work, and today I think my plans are to create some sort of tutorial for the game, because it might not be immediately apparent what you actually need to do. So now that I've figured out how the tile set works, I'm going to make a new scene inheriting the existing scene and change up the scenery, maybe add in some text in the background to explain what you need to do, and make it a lot easier as well, so people can actually get to the end of that before they go into the main game, because I feel like it might be a little bit difficult. So that's one of my goals today. The other goal is to get the enemies moving properly, because they don't properly move across the screen yet, and to also get a boss fight when you deposit a certain amount of gold into the cauldron. I really want to be able to get the enemies to work. That's something that I'm still trying to get my head around. They seem to be glitching all over the place, and I at least want like 2 or 3 different movement mechanics. So that's today's task. Let's see how we get on. So I spent the final day making a tutorial level and finding a whole bunch of art assets to try and make the game look at least somewhat presentable. And I found out that on itch.io you can actually look for game assets and filter out AI generated art. So I ended up getting a lot of really cool assets from itch.io and making a few myself, but I thought to speed up the process, and because I was making the game entirely on my own, I would have to rely on some outside help from somewhere. So it was really great that those assets were out there for me to use. And I also found a really cool music pack as well, which I actually think would do really well in a proper RPG. It actually sounds amazing. So the music was there, the art was there, the tutorial was there. Unfortunately, I didn't get as far as making the mechanic where you actually combine the ingredients at the end in order to make the items to sell. Instead, it just goes to a screen that says I ran out of time, basically. But even so, I had something that was fully playable from start to finish, and there was only a few hours left. So now it was time to export the game and get it uploaded to itch.io, and I did not realise that so much could go wrong in such a short space of time, and I really wish I'd actually tried exporting it sooner, because there were so many problems with the export that I couldn't have foreseen beforehand. The screen resolution wasn't right, it wouldn't upload to itch.io correctly, the Windows and Mac exports just did not work at all. I just didn't understand the export settings in Godot, so in the end I managed to get it so that it resizes with the screen, which does actually work, but there was another problem. There was about half an hour until the deadline, and for some reason the font that I'd used in the game works fine when I was playing it in Godot and testing it out in the game engine, but as soon as I exported it to HTML and opened it up in itch, all of the exclamation marks and commas and colons and everything that wasn't just a regular character of the alphabet was just this weird glitched character, and it completely ruined the entire game, and I had about 20 minutes to fix it, so I frantically went through and removed every bit of grammar from the entire game, and also downloaded a new font pack, so the UI isn't quite how I would like it, but I had about 10 minutes left, so I re-exported it and uploaded it to itch again, and thank God it worked this time, because I was cutting it so close to the deadline, and I was honestly getting so stressed out at this point. So the game was up just in time for the deadline, and now it was time to make the itch.io page. So I tidied it up a little bit, I put the screenshots on there, pressed submit. The 4 days went by so fast, I could not believe that I got as much done as I did either, and I really enjoyed taking the time to actually properly focus on the game engine. So it's been a few days since the end of the jam. Let's take a look at how the game was received and check out some of the comments on the submission page. The first thing that I was kind of annoyed about, and I don't know why this has happened, but some of the screenshots don't work properly on the submission page. When you click on them, they come up perfectly fine, but for some reason the previews don't work, so I don't know whether that puts some people off checking out the game or not. But even so, I've got some great comments and some constructive criticism as well, which I was very much appreciative of. Obviously, I kind of know what's wrong with the game, but let's have a look and see what people had to say anyway. Fun game. Unfortunate it wasn't finished. Indeed. Not a bad little game. Movement would be better if the witch followed the mouse. That way you could use left and right to click and draw or dash. Honestly, well done. With a little more polish, it could make for an interesting game. I did consider using mouse controls, but I basically just ran out of time. I also considered having WASD as a control option instead of just the arrow keys, but again, ran out of time.
Hey, hola Andrea.
Said he really enjoyed it, even if the ghost scared him. And Croverlord actually is someone that I had on stream on my other monitor while I was making my game. This game looks...
Sí, lo conozco. Really enjoyed playing this, even if the ghosts scare me. También es uno de los que vi cuando estaban haciendo su juego en vivo y jugué su juego ya después.
Croverlord said he really enjoyed it, even if the ghost scared him. And Croverlord actually is someone that I had on stream on my other monitor while I was making my game. And his game looks really cool as well. It's this little game where you move the robot around, and I did play the full thing after the stream, and I really enjoyed watching his streams as well while I was doing my game. Here's the clip of him playing my game and getting scared at that ghost.
Go back to the start, else the ghost will come and... Oh!
La música bien de Super Nintendo.
Okay, great. You finished the level. To the cauldron.
And again here, someone else was scared of the ghost. Every witch is brave and fearless until time is up and death pursues you. The drawing mechanics are very cool. Really cool idea, like the loop-in for the attacking the enemies. It seems like the scope was a bit too ambitious, but it was still a very creative entry. Concept was really cool, even the unfinished game is fun to play. Great artistic game. I can't take any credit for the art, but thank you. The monster couldn't kill literally led me to death when I saw the witch. Good job. That was a cute little game, really loved the art. The only part that looked a little strange were the cards. They looked much higher pixel count. Yes, they were. That was just me not really understanding what I was doing, but yeah, they do look very much out of place. And I will take that into consideration with the next game, because I am actually one of those people that get really annoyed if the pixels are different sizes, and I fell into that trap with this one. I don't actually get the voting results until another few days' time, so I'll put them in the comments down below, because I still wanted this video to go out on Friday. So on the whole, I'm really proud of what I managed to accomplish in the time that I had. had.
Algún
And I
día
definitely
voy a
recommend
participar.
doing game jams as well. Even if you're just slightly curious about the idea of making a game, it's definitely worth giving it a go. And a game jam really lets you focus in for that specific amount of time. And I've seen some
Gato.
amazing results from people who this was even their first ever game jam, and some of the games are better than one that I made. And I even studied game design before I ended up getting my regular job. And if you want to hear about my game dev journey, all the way back from the start,
¿Qué
games
pasa
I
si
made as
ese
a kid,
número
all the
que
way
sale
up
al
until
final
today, click the video up here. And if you're a game developer yourself as well, check out my Discord server. I actually have a section in there specifically for game development, and there's some amazing projects going on at the minute. So it would be amazing if you joined the Discord server and shared your project with all
Creo
of the
que
amazing
necesito hacer un
Retrobike
Discord yo.
community.
Ya
That
van
is it for
varios
this
que me
episode,
dicen.
though. I really hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you all again very
O
soon.
ponen un comando ahí de que, hey. Y pues no tengo. No aparece un Discord. Hi, man, roguelite, deck builder. 4 days. A ver. ¿Cómo me sorprende esta racita que se avientan los juegos así en chinga en 3 días, 4
Hey, what's up
días?
guys, it's Spinbonk, and this past weekend I competed in
A
the
lo mejor algún día.
GMTK Game Jam 2025.
Algún día yo también.
If you somehow don't know, the GMTK Game Jam is an annual game jam hosted by Game Maker's Toolkit where contestants have 4 days to make a game from scratch following a theme. This is one of the biggest game jams out there with over 35,000 contestants.
Yes,
and I've
es
done
el
games
más
for
grande.
years, so I wanted to give it my all. Now, normally I do game jams alone, but this time around I'd be teaming up with fellow indie dev X-Ray and my composer friend KJ. With our team formed, a few minutes before the jam started, we hopped on a call to await the theme announcement, which was Loop. As with all GMTK game jams, there's always a ton of ways you can interpret the theme. You can make a racing game where you loop in circles, or maybe have some kind of death loop or time loop mechanic. So we opened up a Google Doc and started drafting out tons of things that could loop. Then with this list made, we tried brainstorming interesting mechanics that could come out of these things that can loop. We bounced a ton of ideas off each other, but one idea that kept coming back would be some kind of game where you draw loops to collect items.
Es lo mismo del otro, como que varios se les
Imagine a game
pensan lo
where you play a
mismo.
farmer who has animals loose, and it's your job to wrangle them together inside of a lasso to capture them within a certain time limit. Then, depending on what animals you lasso, you'll either get points, which can be used to clear increasing points requirements at each round, or cash, which can be used to purchase new animals or upgrade existing ones. This way, the player will want to capture enough points so they don't lose out on the points requirement, but will also want to make sure they get cash animals so they have enough money for upgrades in the long term. We also thought it'd be cool to have synergies between animals, so maybe if the player catches either a sheep or a pig in their lasso, they get 5 points. But if they lasso a sheep and a pig in the same lasso, they'll get a points bonus or points multiplier. This way, the player can just spam lassos, but have to think methodically about what animals they wanted to capture to maximize their synergies. This idea sounded really promising to us, so we got straight to work. X-Ray started working on the lassoing mechanic, while I started working on setting up some of the underlying game architecture to handle upgrades, synergies, and deck building. After a few hours at work, I had a bunch of scripts together that were a good start to handle some of the core gameplay elements. For example, we had a game manager, shop manager, and synergy manager, which I was all working on slowly but surely. In the meantime, I checked in with X-Ray, and he was making good progress on the lasso mechanic. Now the player could hold down their mouse to start drawing a lasso on their screen, and if they let go, the lasso will autocomplete and close to form a circle. X-Ray's code could also detect objects that were inside of the complete lasso, which would be essential for a capturing system. In the call, I showed off my capture manager logic, which had a place for possible synergies the player could get, where we could specify animals required to form that synergy, and what bonuses the synergy would give, such as a points bonus, a cash bonus, or a points multiplier. KJ was also hard at work on the soundtrack for the game, so overall things were going well. But at this point, X-Ray was going to work on the animal movement logic for the game, and I was going to work on the shop area. But I needed a bit of direction on what to make the shop look like, so we drafted out a rough concept. Essentially, we decided that the shop would take place inside of the farmer's barn, and inside, the player could purchase one of 3 things. They could either purchase a new animal that would be added to their barn/deck and have a chance of spawning the next round, an upgrade to one of their existing animals, or a new synergy/combo. See, originally we imagined that the player would have every animal synergy unlocked by default and would have to discover them. However, after some discussion, we thought it'd be more fun if the player would have to purchase these synergies and form a deck around them, limited to 3 synergies at a time. So also on the right hand side, here is the synergies deck, and on the left hand side is the player's animal deck. We also had some ideas for passive upgrades here, like deck removal, but we scrapped those due to time limitations, so just ignore those for now. Anyways, with this plan in mind, I got to work making the shop. I set up the logic under the hood, while X-Ray continued to refine his lassoing system and create unique animal movements and logic. A few hours later, I had some basic shop code set up that would allow the player to purchase unique kinds of items such as new animals, animal upgrades, and synergies. I set up some really basic UI here, as well as the logic where the player could have animals in their deck, and these animals would display on the left side of the screen here. And with that said, that was pretty much it for the
Me gustaría
first day.
saber hacer eso.
On day
Necesito
2, I
aprender.
woke up and got straight to work on the art. For this game, we wanted to have a wide variety of animals available, so I had lots of sprite work to do. I got to work drawing all kinds of barn animals like sheep and cows, and while in the meantime, X-Ray continued working on the unique logic and movement for every animal in the game. Like for example, these ovals you see would be wolves, which would go after regular barn animals and chase them down. We decided we wanted to add a few predators like these, so the player can just loop the entire screen and capture everything. Instead, if the player captured a wolf or other predator, for example, their points or cash for that capture may be cut in half to make the player think more methodically. Anyways, X-Ray also got some really satisfying loop animations set up where the lasso would wrangle animals down to the bottom of the screen after capturing, as well as some really satisfying points and cash pop-ups. But as for me, I was just chugging along creating animals. This took longer than expected because I found getting the shape of animals right was really difficult for me, and I often had to resort to using existing pictures or sprite art as reference. But anyways, after a few hours, I got 10 animals done. We had a bear, a chicken, which is definitely not heavily inspired by Stardew Valley, a cow, a dog, a fox, a goat, a horse, which was definitely also not heavily inspired by Stardew Valley, a pig, a sheep, and a wolf. Then staying on the art train, I started drawing up the sprite for the player's barn and just a bunch of other necessary art for the game. So by the end, we had a barn, a fence which never quite made it into the game, a shop inside where the player could purchase upgrades, and just a bunch of other miscellaneous stuff. But that was it for day 2, and I started off by spending some time choosing a font for the game and adding all the art I made into the shop area. This took ages, but by the end, the shop was really coming together and looking good. X-Ray, on the other hand, worked on getting my art implemented for the animals and finished every piece of animal logic, so they all have unique point/cash values and movement patterns. But back to work, I started creating the deck logic for the shop. So now the player could toggle the deck with this button in the top left if they want to see the animals in their barn. They could also toggle this button in the top right to view their synergies, which would update when the player purchases a synergy. However, since the player can only have 3 synergies in their deck at a time, if they purchase a synergy with their deck,
this is for a game jam. Why is this so cool?
I then got to work on creating the animal upgrade logic to round out the shop, but before I could finish that, we did another check-in, and KJ, our composer, was flying through making tons of music for the game. And X-Ray had made great progress on the gameplay and polish. All my art was now fully implemented, and there was now a lasso timer, a bunch of super satisfying capture pop-ups, and a transition to the barn shop, which I had yet to finish. So I hopped back into Sprite and changed up the barn to have these doors which could open with an animation. I then wrapped up the rest of my shop logic and helped implement our shop transition into the main game scene to make things look smooth. After some work, now if I start the game, capture a few animals, and let the timer run out, the game will smoothly transition to the shop inside the barn, which looks so nice in my opinion. I then worked on a bunch of small stuff to get the game to a more functional and polished state. So I created this dirt texture to go into the barn, created a simple start screen and scene transition, added some grass texturing, and now things were starting to come together. The game loop was there, and just had a few more essential things to implement. X-Ray got started on the tutorial and all the ideas for synergies in the game, while I created this screen to force the player to select a predator after every 3 rounds, as I realized that this was probably necessary to keep the game from becoming too easy. I then just did a bunch more shop work, getting descriptions to populate properly for all items in the shop, and made sure everything was set up and functioning there. I also created a simple lose panel if the player doesn't meet the points requirement for a given round, and created this point scaling logic to make it so every round the player will have to score more and more points to progress. And by this point, X-Ray had finished all these synergy concepts, so it's my turn to make art for all these synergies. We were pretty ambitious, having 24 unique synergies in the game, so I just quickly drew up a sprite for each, and by the end we had 24 unique icons, which I was pretty happy with.
Damn.
The final thing I did on day 3 was throw together some simple cover art for the game, and I called it a night. I woke up the next day at around 9 AM with 4 hours left in the jam. And one thing I feel like I need to mention at this point is that this was by far the hardest game jam I've ever done in my life. See, most game jams I've done in the past range anywhere from 24 to 72 hours. However, this game jam was a whopping 96 hours. So it really was an endurance battle, and combined with me getting less than ideal sleep each night, I was really starting to struggle. But we had no choice but to push on, or we weren't going to finish this game in time. The final 4 hours of the jam were mostly a blur for me. The previous night, X-Ray had stayed up adding all the music and sound effects our composer KJ made. With
I
4
saw
hours
a
left
lot
in
of
the
people
jam, we
live
needed to test and balance the
just
game
going
as much as we
crazy.
could while tying up all the loose ends. It was just a pure frantic grind, getting everything playable complete, and I really don't remember every small thing I worked on, but as the jam deadline approached, we managed to get things done literally at the last minute.
Cool.
Actually, later than last minute. Thankfully, there was a 1 hour submission grace period, which kind of saved us to get our build up and running. But we got it done, and I was so exhausted
Should I change?
I immediately took a nap. And overall, I'm super happy with the game we created. I think X-Ray, KJ, and I worked super hard and well together as a team, and I think that really shows in the end product. I genuinely think this is the best Game Jam game I've ever been a part of, and in my biased opinion, the game is just really fun to play. It felt like we were able to pack in a bunch of content, replayability, and polish all inside of the time frame just to create a super satisfying game loop, and thankfully most people who played the game seem to agree. And while it might not be the most balanced, you can still go for some super sick unique builds and strategies each run to try to get as far as possible. So if you want to play the game, the link is in the description, and a huge thanks to X-Ray and KJ for being great Game Jam partners. I'll leave a link to X-Ray's channel below, as well as KJ, who is actively looking for games to compose for, so check them both out. Anyways, that's all for this video. If you liked it, please consider subscribing to my channel, or check out my commercial roguelike, Slimekeep. Thanks again, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.
5 years.
Hey, what's up guys, it's Ben Bonk, and if you're seeing this...
I'm watching just this GMTK Jam. I already saw this. Okay, Black Hole.
4 days to make a game. This is my participation to the Game Maker's Toolkit Game Jam 2025. If you've never heard of a Game Jam, the concept is simple. You have a limited number of days to make a game from scratch, and it needs to fit in the theme of the jam. For the GMTK Game Jam 2025, the theme was Loop. My submission for that was a game called Event Horizon, where you control a ship around a black hole that's trying to pull you in. Your goal is to save other ships as fast as you can. Well, there's actually a bit more to the game, but I'll come back to that later. Let's talk about how I made this game. There are 3 main things I wanted to do for this game. First, I wanted a simple game that I could finish in 4 days, because 4 days is a very short amount of time to make a game. Secondly, I wanted to focus on visuals and have something that would look nice, at least to my standards, which are not necessarily very high. I wanted to make sure the visuals were polished, and this was mainly to counteract the simple gameplay of the game. Number 3 was a good soundtrack. This came up later in the creation process, because at first, I didn't have a solid idea. See, the word loop felt like a good theme for me at first, but I realized quickly that I had too many ideas, and they would take too long to execute. So I had to downgrade to a very basic gameplay. I really wanted to make sure the game would be finished and playable. And I ended up with a very simple concept. You must complete the loop. To do that, you navigate between 2 circles, and if you touch one of them, you lose. Simple enough, right? This was done on day 1 of the jam, and by the end of the day, I had a working game. Definitely not great looking, but the gameplay was here. It was also very simple. And looking at the current state of the game, I realized that this kind of looked like a black hole. From there, I decided to try to get the art style to match that. On day 2, before working on the visuals, I needed something to keep the players in a loop. The goal is to navigate around the circle in a clockwise manner. But what if people want to do the opposite? To avoid that, I have to push the players to go in the direction I want. So I added checkpoints that appear one at a time, in a clockwise manner. Later on, I changed these invisible checkpoints to be shifts that you have to save. And that's all it took to have this loop. Of course, you could always go the opposite way, but that would take a while, and people would likely ignore this idea. And ultimately, even going backwards, you still complete a loop. Multiple ones, actually. Once I got that, I started working on the visuals. Creating a black hole is not easy, and especially not in 2D. So I decided to keep things simple looking, but still accurate. To make a black hole, you need 4 things. First, a sphere, or in our case, a circle, that is black. Then another sphere around it that is white, representing the accretion disk. Then another layer with a reddish color to represent debris that is absorbed. This goes hand to hand with a white circle.
Okay.
but you could go without it if you want to keep things
Ni
simple.
lo hice aquí directo en el
Finally, last thing
Unity-
you need is some
Unity,
distortion around the black
Mm.
hole. Because this is 2D, you can't really create a refraction effect. What I did was actually just creating ripples around the black hole.
Ah, no,
In this
mucho
case,
para mí
this
todavía
is applied
esto.
to the space background I have.
That's
which is
why I
actually
want to
two
learn
images
Godot.
on top of each other.
This is too much.
This gives the illusion of a time-space distortion around the black hole. Now, a bit of processing, mainly some bloom on top of that, really helps the general style. And that's it. Simple, but straight to the point. Of course, this is not a scientifically perfect black hole representation. Far from it. But this is a video game, and this representation is quite close to the one that people have in mind when they hear the word black hole. And that's all you need in a video game. We're not doing science, but we're just trying to have some fun. Now, this is all I need for the game to work. You have the visuals and a gameplay loop. Just go
And the
around the black
energy,
hole, from
energy
right to left,
rays emitting
and if you don't die, you win.
from the
Great.
inside.
But it's a bit boring because once you're done, there's nothing else to do. So people can be done with the
Nothing you're
game in less than a
doing.
minute or two. If you're really good, probably in 20 seconds. I did a timer and a bit score logic to keep people entertained by the idea of trying to get a better score. But that's still not enough. What we need is more gameplay somehow. And this was the main task for day 3. So, we're stuck in a loop, right? What if we could escape? This is the second gameplay aspect of the game. You did your job, congratulations. You can repeat that again and again. Keep being stuck in a time loop. Wait, what if you can break the loop? Now the real game happens. You have hidden objectives, which I later made more clear by having an objectives panel. This way,
It's gonna
players will
rain.
know there is more than just looping around. This is important because someone who is struggling with a game might just give up, thinking that, it's just about the initial loop. Having the objectives panel and hidden objectives push people to realize that there is probably more to the game than just looping. So here are all
How many days until the each game jams until the brackies? 9 days. We still don't have the mini Jan, what you started? Tiny Music Jam just started. Juegos, this is Spanish. Mega Stack. Theme, Triumph of the Bells. So this is about just music or games? Is the joint submission. What's the theme? Pues de diseño modular procedural. Pues un taller. Porque está en el jam. Mega Stack Jam submission. So that's unit. No, this isn't real. Mega Stack Jam. So built. Cash prices. I know. What? 20 games? Destiny games. Designer for everyone instead of taking their. Simply choose from any game in the. Really? Step make a slightly more complex game. Use game 3. Then certain mechanical. Okay, wait. Oh, you just choose. You make a pong or a flappy bird, a breakout or a jet. This is for beginners. This is really good for beginners. You make an asteroid. You make a Pac-Man. Make a Mario. Dig Dug is easier than Worms, right? I don't know. Make a more complex to the game, but okay. So let me, because this one sounds cool. So for everyone isn't taking their first steps, yes, in their own game dev journey, pushing yourself through each stage of development. Yes, these are actually like games recommended for newbies. Simply choose from any game you challenge. And for choose a game you feel confident you can complete in the 2 weeks duration. I wish I knew I could make one of those. Can I use Flash? Can I go back to use Flash? Choose a game that you know you will need to push yourself technically to achieve. If you're not sure what to do, just choose the next challenge. I know that. Okay. I actually, where is it? Breakout. I wish I could make a breakout with crazy weapons. Just like the ball doesn't matter. You just launch missiles and bullets and clones, or I don't know, robots or whatever. Just don't lose the ball. So Mart. What? This game is similar and mechanical scope of game number 2. Did the priority to focus on the game sprites? Try hard at moving. Just an animation? Okay. I guess there's several of these a year. El 31. This actually sounds cool. I wish I could join. What if I learn? What if I learn Game Builder Garage in 1 week? At least enough to make one of these games. And then I join. Is that somewhere allowed? All entries should be uploaded as a single content accessible game. Damn. Yeah, that was the Maybe I can upload it just saying like, look, I know this doesn't count. I don't want you to, but maybe someone can play it. Maybe someone can have fun. Hmm. 79. Okay. Hosted by blah 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 blah. About the Jan team, House of Remembrance. Ooh. Okay. Let's continue
The
watching.
hidden objectives of the game that I decided to implement. First, after the loop, you can break free.
There's a lot of people watching.
You can escape the gravity.
Welcome,
2,
welcome everyone.
You can try to leave the area, but doing that will actually bring you back to the beginning. 3, you can also do a loop again without having to stay in the recreation disk. 4, after getting 3 objectives done, a new option appears in
We're
the
learning
now use
how to make games.
5, now you can try to shoot the black hole and destroy it.
Watching
well, you won't destroy it.
devlogs
You're just going to feed it
of the
until it
GMTK Game Jam
full,
participants.
and that's the real ending of the game.
I hope I can learn something.
By the end of day 3, I was pretty much done with the game. Now it's day 4, and I only have a few hours to submit the project. Great, everything is ready, everything was uploaded, everything is fine. Well, turns out 2 hours before the deadline, even though I already submitted my game,
Background
I
looks
decided
great.
to implement a hard mode in the game. Because why not, right? The main reason for this idea is also the main issue with the game. To me, this is not difficult enough. The game can be done very quickly. Except that, with this statement, I'm expressing a strong bias. I've been working on the game for the last days, debugging and testing it. I became really good at it. And because of that, it felt like I needed a harder mode. But, as suggested by people who played my game during the jam, it was not that easy.
Yeah, I heard about
Except
that.
I didn't know that. And that's why I made a hard mode, where the gravity of the black hole is 5 times stronger.
That when you're developing, you became really good at your own game.
So I had to fix a lot of things,
And
including
you may end up making it very difficult for everyone else.
And the panic started to begin. But I did it 20 minutes before the deadline. The game was finally done, with an extra objective, which is just complete hard mode, and a different timer to tell players how long it took them to complete the game on hard mode. Great. Now, if you want to try the game and see how fast you can beat it, the link is in the description. My best is 10.89 seconds. So, if you try the game, just tell me your scores in the comments.
Hi, I'm Jbrook, and I love doing game jams. In fact, I've done almost 20 of them so far.
Okay.
So when my usual composer Maximus reached out to me about teaming up for this year's GMTK Game Jam, I obviously said yes. I've participated in the GMTK Game Jam exactly 3 times before, but never got far. The first time was when I was still really new to game development, and by new I mean it was literally my first game jam ever, and the game I made for it was the second game I ever made in my entire life. But despite the fact that I almost never win these jams, I also almost never pass up.
Yep, yellow beep. Sorry. Se agradece. De hecho, quiero. No sé por qué me está saliendo eso. ¿Porque lo mencioné? ¿O por qué? GIF del 2025. ¿Que no hay? Ya lo vi, pero la mecánica es del. Justamente de encerrar enemigos. Me da risa por el final.
Being a dad is pretty great, but my favorite part might be how my free time has been impacted. Because of this, I've had a very limited amount of time to do things like play video games or watch TV or make videos, which I like to do. So I decided, with a now 6-week-old baby, a job, and a wedding this past weekend, I decided the best thing to do was to do a game jam. Why not? Game dev has been an interest of mine for a long time. I remember making like RPG Maker games back when I was in like middle school, and that interest has stuck with me. And now lately, I've gotten into the Godot engine, and I've really had fun with it. I don't have any aspirations to become like a big game developer or release like a big commercial game. It's just something
if
I
don't
enjoy,
play
and it's a fun
Pokemon
little
later,
creative field for me to explore when I have time to do it. One thing that I've always heard when it comes to advice for people getting into game dev is to join a game jam. And I decided to do that. I saw that there was a Game Maker's Toolkit game jam, which is a very big one. There were almost 10,000 games submitted to this game jam. Okay, so that's a huge amount of people coming together to make a lot of games. So what a game jam is, if you're not aware, is you basically get a short amount of time to make a video game that, you know, fits with some theme that you are given for the jam. For this jam, the theme was loop. And when I heard that theme, I was really excited, and I had all these ideas running through my head, but it was a matter of choosing one and sticking with it. I was entering this game jam as a solo developer. I don't have any friends who do game development. So with that in mind, I have to pick something that is very small in scope and just really pick one mechanic and try to build something that functions at the end of the day, that has a beginning and an end. That's all I wanted to make, something complete that I could say I finished and just have some fun, and I did. So some of the ideas that came to my mind when I was thinking for this game jam was, well, I could make something where a player is in a repeated environment over and over, maybe trying to find a way out, like that Exit 8 video game where you're walking through the hallway looking for anomalies. Thought that might work. I obviously thought
it was a
a
hospital
lot of people did,
where you had
like
to
a time loop
check for
mechanic.
differences.
And I did kind of actually use that in my game a little bit, kind of with the narrative. Another possible option was something like, I thought about maybe like a one-screen game, like you're playing the same level over and over and over, but you have a time limit on how fast you can beat it, and that time limit gets shorter and shorter, but you also get stronger with some sort of modifiers, like speed modifiers, or you can jump higher or something like that. I don't know. These are all ideas that I had, but there was one idea that I really wanted to explore, and it was an idea based on a game that I don't even know if I ever played, maybe a little bit back in the day. But it's the Pokemon, Ranger? I think it's Pokemon Ranger, where you can draw the circles around the Pokemon to catch them. I was going to do something like that in my game. So right away, something I noticed is that loop was actually hard to implement. And again, I am not a master coder by any stretch. I am very much a hobby programmer, which means my code probably looks terrible to someone who actually knows what they're doing. But I tried a few different ways to make the loops work, and I found a way that kind of works. Like, it's very passable. This is one of those things that happen in a game jam. You know, you only have so much time, so you have to just get things to a level where you're just like, you know what, I have to work on other stuff. This is at a good enough level, you know, and I'm working by myself. Not a lot of time, so that's what I did.
Good enough is
so then I started building the dungeon, and again, very small scope. So what I just made a little tutorial area, and then you move on to the main dungeon, which is just a hub with 4 rooms off to the side. Each room has its own little puzzle or combat challenge, and the idea is you have to complete all 4 of those before you face the final boss. So again, super small scale, and you know, I was able to make that kind of work. And one of my favorite parts, actually my favorite part of my own game, is this little rat character. And I can't say anything else about him, but I'll show you this screenshot right here. Now this guy, when I see this screenshot, I just laugh. I don't know why. It's my own game. It's not that funny, but it just makes me laugh, and it's just something that if you ever play this game, like if you watch this and decide to play it, please come back and let me know what you think of the rat, because for some reason, that is by far my favorite part of this game. So this actually took me all the way up basically until the deadline. I was exporting my game to HTML at like 15 minutes before the original deadline. Now, thank goodness the deadline actually got pushed back an hour to accommodate for the server overload that was happening because so many people were submitting their games all at once. And I actually got lucky because I technically, by the original deadline, submitted my game 3 minutes late. So
I'm gonna show you. It has to be. Yes, spirits of GMTK. Okay, final day. Need to search for final day. Look. Where's the clock?
Next game is Nebula.
Oh. No, this is not the final day. This is playing video games. Ah! Looking at the games, no. We're until yes, this is the one. This should be the one.
Again. To my drive.
Where's the clock? 1 hour 15.
Better main menu.
Did you push it so I can playtest it?
I'll push it right now. I haven't started building. I was just switching.
Auto prefab, if it actually.
Okay.
You don't have the chat. Okay, let me. Is this the one where?
Oh my god, these symbols are like so good.
How many?
I found a bug.
I don't know how many minutes before.
I found a bug.
You found a bug. What is it? Is it important? Or not?
The time runs out. I was there live. I was on the chat and I told him the news about the extended hour. He was let me see. Just yes, you see how there's the hour.
Cinema. We're sorted.
Is that actually a thing, or are you being wholly trolled?
Sherman, you're getting banned.
Oh, you hear? That's
extra hour to ensure you.
He's talking about me. I pasted like someone in another chat pasted a quote about the time extended 1 more hour because the servers were very slow and no one can upload the game and they were given 1 more hour and I was there and I pasted that from another chat, but they say like, dude, if you're joking, you're banned. You're banned for life. And I actually didn't know if it was real. I was writing, I saw this in another chat. I don't know if it is real, but they checked it and yeah, it was real. But listen,
What is it? Is it important? Or
You
not?
can't change carriage on the bridge, otherwise you get
That's
permanently
fine.
twisted.
That's fine. Don't get it twisted, mate. It's fine.
Don't get it twisted. Don't get it twisted, lad.
Oh, due to itch.io server issues, we're giving you 1 extra hour to ensure your game is uploaded and in the jam.
that's the message. That's my message.
We're sorted.
Is that actually a thing, or are you being wholly trolled?
Sherman, you're getting banned permanently if this is a joke. You're getting perma-banned from life. To be fair, I cannot get on the itch servers. I cannot get on the website. Oh yeah, time extended. Yeah. Seriously.
Let's go! Let's...
Yes!
That was everyone's reaction.
Don't lock out.
You know what, I'm gonna be honest.
Not the big gun, please!
Someone, another guy on their team was on chat, and he was like, update the timer! Yes, update timer!
Sorry, I'm like passing out at the game.
I'll be honest, I did when I went to grab my laptop so I could pull the full thing to my laptop and also do builds on my laptop at the same time.
And you didn't feel like saying anything 10 minutes before the deadline that you can't get on itch.
No, it wasn't the itch thing. I was more so I wasn't sure the builds were gonna happen in time.
Oh my god.
Cinema! To be fair, I also the cover is still uploaded.
And that was another thing that they didn't even have time. They were exporting the build. It takes a lot of time.
Thank goodness the deadline was extended because my game actually did make it into the Game Jam. So I did it. I published the game into the Game Jam.
Can I erase this?
Okay, it's good, I think, or at least good enough to make me feel proud. Like I learned a lot in these few days. I learned a lot of things that work. I learned a lot of things that I was doing wrong as I was making the game.
Everyone was laid out.
I'm putting in every single
on the last hour. The nervous.
That is just working terribly, but it's working. Like the game is held together with like duct tape and dreams. I just wanted to share my experience with this because it was really fun to be in.
Why is it called duct tape? Does anyone knows why?
I was busy. My mind
is it called duct tape?
Was like writing code in my head or thinking like, how can I handle a boss battle with this mechanic and things like that. And again, I didn't make anything revolutionary. I just made something.
Should I, instead of using just chatting on Twitch, should I put the category software and game development?
Game in the description if you want to give it a shot. If you do play it, I would really love to hear what you think, and I want all feedback, positive and negative. And I know there will be some negative feedback if you do play it, because there's a little bit of jank to this game. I think what I want to do now is I want to go through and play some of the other games that were submitted. And like I said, there was nearly 10,000 games submitted to this game jam. So I'm really excited to see what other people came up with in that short amount of time and see how different my game is from the other games out there. I actually might make a video showcasing some of my favorite games that I play in the game jam. And if you're interested in that, please let me know in the comments below. And in fact, if you put a game in this game jam, please comment it down below so I can play your game. I would love to see what you came up with, and I might put it in that video. So yeah, that was my first game jam experience. It was chaotic, a little bit stressful. It was exhausting, but at the same time, it was really fun. I just had a lot of fun doing it, and I know I will do another game jam in the future. It's just a matter of finding the time for it. I really probably shouldn't have done it in this time. I was just so busy, but I've just been having this itch to make something, so I just wanted to. You know, at the end of the day, I made time for it. I slept a little less, and I was able to make it work. If you are someone that's into game dev, or you're interested in game dev and you've never done a game jam, I highly recommend it. It's very beginner friendly. You'll see games made anywhere from people who are making their first game ever to people who are making some very, very professional looking games in just a handful of days. And it's really impressive, but I think it's really fun to see the range. I think it's fun to see the games that are clearly made by someone like me who is just learning the ropes versus someone who can just whip out something just giant insane in that short time.
Water bottle?
Now, if you'll excuse me, I really need to go catch up on like 4 or 5 days of sleep. But of course, there is a newborn in the house, so you know I'm never going to sleep ever again. Okay, hold on. I finished recording this video, and I was watching the live stream. So they do this live stream for this game jam where the organizer of the jam, Mark, he plays through the games like randomly, and he showcases them on his stream, and he gives some feedback, you know, positive and negative. And my game was actually featured, which when I was watching the stream, I actually started shaking when my game pulled up. I just started getting so scared because I'm like, oh my gosh. This is Jake. Like it's fine. I just had a bad feeling. Well, what did Mark think about it?
This person says, "Have fun, my first ever game jam. Thank you." Can I just say, I am not a fan. What was that yellow line? Makes me mad. Makes me angry. Just doesn't feel that good because of the. What? I like the. I like. You can tell I'm losing the will to live now.
Well.
So he's the creator of the game jam, the YouTuber. Yeah. Debut de despedida. Really? Oh, in audio. What does that mean? What does that mean? ¿Qué? Okay, last one. 3 hours. No. This is short. Let's see.
I'm a game developer and I make games. Wow, a shocker. Who would have thought? And this year, I decided to participate in the GMTK Game Jam 2025 and wake up at 3 AM to find out what the theme was.
This year's theme is just one word.
YouTube Premium. Ooh la la.
So after about like an hour of brainstorming, I came up with this idea that you're a pigeon and you have to shit on the people who like walk below you in order to cause chaos and stuff as your 9-to-5 job, because 9-to-5 jobs are loose, I think.
1 hour later.
So after getting the plan done, I set up a basic prototype where you can, you know, fly around and loosen your bowel above things, I guess you could say, which is, I don't know, pretty cool, I guess. Then I decided to borrow this pigeon spray because I can't draw, and it's much
I think I saw that one.
Than draw for me. Yeah, so pretty perfect.
No. It's very similar to.
Don't mind if I do.
To a pigeon used in another game.
After all that, I decided to just sit down and make some walking animations because the other one was a little bit janky, but not too janky.
It needs to move, yeah.
And I feel like the simpler ones would just fit the game a bit better. And then the process from there was pretty much just adding those animations in through code and through blend trees and yeah.
What is this?
But eventually, it was done.
Where's the loop? Estás muy abajo, güey.
So
no te alcanzo.
I changed the pigeon spray and made a businessman that you've got to like kind of shit on, like a sandwich, to make him run up and stuff. So yeah, pretty cool. Then I just got some assets made. I made the backgrounds and stuff and kind of just tried to add functionality to the whole pooping mechanic. And then I decided to just randomly create like a little prologue section, if you will, maybe like a tutorial section, where the boss pigeon comes up to you and makes you sign a contract and stuff, and I don't know, have you poop on a toddler's balloon to pop it and stuff. I don't know, it's pretty cool. Check it out.
Okay. I feel like this guy has been pooped once or twice in his life.
Then you redesign this magician and I put him into the game. In the game, he doesn't have infinite sandwiches like
is it a burger?
But he does have some pretty cool tricks. Don't poop in the hat. Then I added like a little fridge mini game, which where you essentially like grab the poop and dodge the laxatives, and like 3 worms equals 1 poop, and that's your ammunition for the level, I guess you could say. Just watch it.
Okay. I also feel that this level doesn't work on low.
Anyway, that's about it for this video. If you want to play the game, it's there for Match.io, link in the description.
It's hard to
give it a rating. I think there's like 14 hours left of the game jam.
Where is the loop in this one?
Probably less by the time I actually upload this, but yeah, I'll be making a post-jam version of the game though, so you know, stay tuned for that.
Okay.
Anyway, thank you for watching, and bye-bye.
Bye-bye. This is 20. Cloud is focused on the game for the only 1 minute. GK Game Jam last. I don't know if this is. Just preparing, but I already saw this. I said, a trailer? I want the game dev stuff. Looks cool, but
Getting ready for the next GMTK Game Jam? I've received a few comments on last year's video asking for prep advice, so let's dive into my process to help you crush it.
it could help
While these examples are
if
focused
I
on individual
make
jammers,
games.
all the suggested websites are collaborative and can be used by teams too. Starting with Notion, which is a free website and app focused on organisation. This year I set mine up with widgets to show the length of time left until the end of the jam, the theme once it's been announced, and quick links for websites I'm likely to need. I've also got individual pages for brainstorming, design, art, and programming. Once the jam has actually started, I will adjust these as I need. Alongside Notion, I will be using Pinterest to brainstorm ideas for both general concepts and more specific art inspiration. This was my Pinterest board from last year, and if you've seen my submission, I'm sure you can see the similarities. Another website that works well with Pinterest is Milano. I wish I could say they've sponsored this video, but alas, they have not. I may not use Milano myself this year, as I find Pinterest more effective, but I thought it would still be a useful suggestion. Here is an example of how I've used it for a different project. While it is free, there is a limit on the number of cards you're able to use. The final websites I'd recommend are Google Drive and GitHub, both of which are used for backing up and sharing files. GitHub as a whole is better for source control. However, for sharing assets individually or backing up larger files, such as the final build, I'd recommend Google Drive. Finally, onto game engines. To put it simply, if you're looking to do a game in 3D, your main options are Unreal Engine or Unity. For 2D, it's Unity or Godot. However, if you're not comfortable with programming in any capacity, there are also visual websites such as Scratch or Construct 3, which I'd also recommend looking at. And if you're not sure if you'd like to do 2D or 3D, I'd recommend having a play with the engines to see what you're comfortable with. Personally, I will be using Godot, as I'd like to improve my understanding, and it's also very
there was a lot of submissions
Godot is
using
open
Godot.
source and a fast-growing engine for indie developers. As a final tip, although the itch page is editable after the jam is finished, I like to do the branding of it before submitting, so that I know that everything is sorted and I don't have to stress anymore as soon as the jam is over.
Unity is
Here are a few
losing
pages I have
a
decorated.
lot of people because
Hopefully this quick little video
of
has helped you
their
feel
own
more
fault.
confident with planning for the jam,
Because
and I
of the
wish you all the best
controversy
of
and the
luck. Don't forget, the
stupid
most important
decisions.
thing is to have fun. If you enjoy my content, don't forget to like the video and subscribe. And if you'd like to see
But-
my progress during the jam, I'm hoping to stream it on Twitch. Thank you to my
I
Golden
didn't
Mango
see you
supporter,
there.
Devil. I made my first ever solo game for the GMTK Game.
Okay, this is what I'm looking for. Right? This is the loop. Ah, we just dropped the things here. Kid cookie. Yay. Hey, I know that guy. I mean, it's cool, it's cute, but
Oh man, so I am officially less than a week away from my first.
I want to see mate. 4 days, 1 game, no sleep. This should be the video, right?
All right, testing out my
That is-
vlogging setup right now. Might need a little bit more light in here though. So it's July 29th. Game Jam is tomorrow. I put another 2 hours in finishing up the assets. I think I'm good. If I have to, so we're gonna go ahead and skip work today. And I have a walk.
What?
But you see, it goes behind.
Is this one? This is what I need. This is what I'm looking for. Hey, hello. This is me. See? Hello, Charman. How you doing?
Hi, I'm Julie, also known as JulieXD, and I recently joined my first ever game jam, which was the GMTK Game Jam 2025. Yeah, so I actually haven't made games since high school, and I was using Unity back then, but I've been hearing about a game engine gaining popularity recently, which is called Godot. And I actually experimented with Godot a little bit back then in 2020, but it wasn't as big as today. And so I want to challenge myself by learning a new game engine while also participating in a game jam. Yeah, I don't know whose bright idea that was because I quickly became burnt out on the third day of the game jam, which I'll talk about why later on. Anyways, this year's GMTK Game Jam theme was Loop. But I couldn't actually think of anything when the theme was announced, and so on the first day of the game jam, I literally doom scrolled until 2 p.m. even though the theme was announced earlier in the morning. Anyways, I eventually came up with my game idea in the shower of all things, and the first thing I thought of with Loop was a time loop. Yeah, it's kind of basic, but we can work with it. Anyways, I remember watching YouTubers play this game back then called 12 Minutes. It's a game about a man who is stuck in a time loop where he only has 12 minutes to change the outcome before a police detective breaks into his home and accuses his wife of murder and beats him to death. Basically, I like the idea of having the player do different things to receive a different outcome / ending in a time loop kind of situation. So going into this game, I called my friend for some idea, and he was like, why don't you make a game about someone preparing for their first date, and the reason why they keep rewinding time or starting the day over again is to get the perfect first date. I thought this idea was so cute and decided to go with it. And so that's when I came up with the name called Second First Date. Okay, so on day one, I made a game design document outlining some basic things about the game, and you can pause here if you want to read it, but basically I wanted to make a time loop / rewind story-based game about the MC, which is the frog, trying their best to do everything right to have the perfect first day with their crush, which is Tanuki. And I listed out some milestones I wanted to accomplish for each day of the game jam, and so on day one, I implemented some basic 2D character movement and made some animations using the animation player and animation tree nodes. By the way, all the sprite packs that I'm using come from Jamie Brownhill on itch.io. Anyway, so I ran into some issues already with the walk and idle animations playing at incorrect times.
There's a lot of
and then I realized that both their sprites were literally layered on top of each other. And so I just had to add in some code to toggle on and off their visibility.
You get music.
And there you go, now you can walk and idle in my game. On day 2, I sketched out some levels for the game, which include a bridge level, a forest level, a town level, and a starting area. And this is what the starting area looks like. This is where the player spawns in. And this is the town level.
I bought
it contains all the NPCs besides Tanuki. And this is what the forest looks like. And this is where the player will be able to collect flowers to impress Tanuki. And this is where the bridge is, and this is where the player will meet Tanuki for their first date.
Tanuki, yeah.
On day 3, I got burnt out from implementing a dialogue system all day because it was the hardest mechanism to code in my game. I also had to figure out how to implement dialogue options for the player to choose from and to make the NPC respond to those options. I also hopped on a Discord call with my friend who helped create the dialogue tree with me. It was a bit frustrating to come up with dialogue since the dialogue system I followed was limited to only 4 or 5 panels before it broke on me. Yeah, so this experience made me not want to touch another dialogue system for a month now. Anyways, here are some of the NPC dialogue I implemented into my game. On day 4, I finished up all the levels and scene transitions, but I kind of brute forced my way by creating variations for each scene depending on the player's progress. The game only has one ending since I underestimated how long it would take to make more than one ending, but I am happy with how it came out. Also, it was about 1:30 a.m. on August 3rd when I finished designing the final parts of my game, which included the main menu, credits, and the ending screen. And it wasn't until 2:30 a.m. when I finished exporting, creating my game's itch.io page, and submitting my game 8 hours before the deadline. I actually would have woken up in the morning to do all of this, but I had to wake up at 8 a.m. for a day trip with my friends. After the game jam ended, there was a voting period where we could play and rate each other's submitted games, which was fun. I ended up placing around the top 5% in the narrative category out of over 9,600 entries. Nice. So I think that's pretty good for my first ever game jam. And we don't talk about what happened with the audio category because I was too tired to add an audio at 1:30 a.m. Also, if you want to check out my game, I'll put a link to it in the description. But yeah, I plan on joining the GMTK Game Jam of 2026 in the future, so I'm looking forward to see how much I have improved by then. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.
I don't know if this is good or bad, but it seems like since GMTK's Game Jam is the more famous right now, like people is just waiting for that one instead of looking for more game jams to participate in. Brackets should be a good one. This is another I mean, GMTK of course is the biggest. Of course it's been winning for a lot of years, but see, here's Brackies, here's Brackies. And he's another good, very good YouTube content creator. He actually teaches how to make games. He was retired from YouTube. He stopped making videos and he came back like, I don't know, like 2-3 years later because he discovered Godot. And he fell in love with making games again and started making Godot tutorials. He used to teach, I think, Unity. I'm not sure, but I think it was Unity what he used to teach. But yeah, and of course we have Pirate Software here. I don't know. Was this the last one? Pirate Software had one. No. Then it has to be 17. Really? What? How? Why? What's happening? What are your game jams? Can I the wasn't that the Oh yeah, July. I read January. This ended just like a week before. No, it was July 30 when the GMTK started. So it ended as GMTK was starting. Dude, man. All right. It. Those damn controversies. What was the theme? You are the weapon. Only one. Ouch. It was gonna be more popular, but this wasn't a good year for my man. Okay, I like this one. What are we watching? Oh yeah, we're done with this. Let me take a quick bathroom break. I'll come back in a few minutes.
Participating in a game jam is not in my to-do list in summer, and here I am joining in my first one. It's not just any game jam. Welcome to
GMTK Game Jam 2025.
Is it famous? Is it
For
one
those who don't know,
everyone
GMTK Game Jam is one of the biggest game development
Is the
competitions
biggest.
where developers make their games for a certain amount of time that fits the theme, which takes place annually. As soon as I saw the registration begin, I immediately pressed Join Jam without thinking. This year's Game Jam is open for submissions for 4 days, which means the game has to be finished during that time. I was very excited to see what the theme was. I'm quite excited and nervous at the same time. I want to know the theme right away so that I can get started with the game. The chat is popping off. The premiere is going to premiere in 60 seconds. Oh my gosh, I'm excited. I'm anxiously waiting.
I want to draw
waiting. This is my first time
on
doing
that
a Game Jam,
wall.
so this is hype. This is hype.
This year's theme is just one word.
One word. Loop. Oh, yeah. Interesting. This one is interesting. Okay. I kind of have an idea in my head. I then open up my tablet to think
whiteboard.
of an idea that doesn't just fit the theme. It also has something that increases difficulties for each level. At first, I thought about making a platformer with multiple levels, switching by starting at a starting point and ending at the exact starting point with additional features, because I already got my curve for the platformer. However, as soon as I started making a prototype for the game, I realized that the platformer code was not perfect yet, and I just did not see how the mechanics were good enough. Some of the features I planned were kind of too much for me to handle. Therefore, I decided to do one thing that was intended to be the final task: making sprites. Please, don't be like me. Don't focus on the art first. By the way, the time that the jam started was at 12 midnight.
That's
and
an
I wanted
advice
to sleep
I've been
as soon
hearing a
as
lot.
I
Just
finished drawing my
make
sprite.
a game
Good to know that I got a really good
that
idea for the game
works.
after doing
Don't
it.
focus on
Thank
the art
goodness.
at all.
Also, I don't know why,
Because
but the
you're gonna
progress
be
of me
changing
drawing
it,
the sprites is not shown
so
here.
it doesn't.
So here we are with the first day of the jam. I forgot to film the project I made in the first half of the day, so here is a summary of stuff that I made during that time. I completely scrapped the idea of making a platformer game, and I just turned it into whatever just shapes and beats inspiration. There is an enemy and your objective is to
where's the
avoid the
loop?
bullets and approach the tick buttons as many times as possible. Doing this over and over again fits the theme of the jam: loop. However, there is a twist to it. Once you approach the tick buttons, a new enemy appears somewhere in the map. Chances that you might also spawn the brick walls that block you in the way. Don't worry, they will never spawn in the position of the tick buttons. The enemies rotate themselves and always aim towards the player. They don't shoot the bullets randomly except for one single enemy, which I will show you guys later on. It was quite hard to control the enemy's rotation in order to aim, but it finally worked pretty well. Then I changed the colors of the enemies to distinguish between the types of enemies. Sometimes one small change can make a big difference to your project. I also changed the shape of the bullets that are shot by triangle enemies. As I said before, there's an enemy that does not aim the player at all. That enemy is Circle. It shoots circle bullets in a random direction. This enemy does not have consciousness. I need to note that each enemy has different properties of shooting bullets and their moving speed. At this point, the play scene is looking so much better than expected, but I want more randomness. So I created a signed question block that generates a random object, whether it's a wall or an enemy. There is an additional object called a block wall, which is like a brick wall but with a different design. After implementing all of this, I play tested for way too long. It was just too addicting to me.
We're gonna
which is
play
a
Pokemon
mistake.
Unite
Don't
after
do
the
that,
piece.
guys. Another type of object that I want to make for this game: gadgets. The first gadget is a healing booster. This gadget heals the player. That's it. There's no effect happening yet though. I plan to make a separate function for the script in the next day. Just keep in mind that as long as it disappeared, it worked. I also made it so that the gadget could be generated by toggling the buttons or approaching the question blocks. everything is going as I
This is a good
expected.
idea.
However, it does not really show the variety of changes.
This can also to make games.
I thought of
Just
an idea of
cool
the
things.
level changing its design
One,
after
then
toggling the
another.
buttons for a certain
Just
amount of time.
make a
I
simple game,
fired
but
up
fun.
paint.net and drew some glass sprites. By the way, this is my first time making pixel art. It's not bad, but it's not good either compared to other people's pixel art. Don't judge me, okay? After doing some troubleshooting to the lack of needed sprites, repetitive random changes, etc., I finally created 10 designs that could be changed correctly without in particular order. With the amount of content that I made for the first day, it was time for me to get a good sleep because it was 12 at midnight. That was such a wonderful start to the jam already. Today is the second day. I went outside and had breakfast, rode back home and started making more. Today is the second day. I went outside and had breakfast, rode back home and started making more enemies. Since I thought the play scene was a bit too static because the enemies were not moving, the enemies that I was about to make wouldn't only rotate and aim at the player, they would also run towards the player. Not gonna lie, I had a pretty bad time making it. I had to tweak a lot of numbers and code, fix the bugs of the bullets not flying, and it finally worked. I then made 2 more moving enemies that move like the first moving enemy, and each moving enemy has a different color. There is just one major flaw. Sometimes the moving enemies run out of bounds, which means they go outside the wall. The bullets they shoot can't even touch the player because they are destroyed as soon as they touch the wall. However, there is a very simple solution that makes the game a tad bit easier for players to play. If they go out of bounds, they will be destroyed. I'm quite happy with the stuff I made during the first half of the day. After getting the test out, an idea popped up in my head. I opened paint.net again and drew 2 more sprites for 2 gadgets. One that helps the player with a big amount of health, and the bullet destroying gadget literally destroys all of the bullets that appear in the scene. Before writing code for any of the gadgets, I needed to change a lot of code so that managing the functions of the gadgets could be so much easier. After suffering with so much code written and edited, the bullet destroying gadget worked. The other 2 currently have no functions because I did not implement a health bar for the player. I wanted to give the player some feedback after toggling the buttons by making particle system for each weapon, wall and gadget. This hopefully makes the player know where the objects are spawned. And now I finally created a health bar for the player and some properties for gadgets on healing and damaging the player. The health bar is on top of the player. It's quite small but big enough for people to see. I also made color animations for the player if they get damaged by anything harmful. While the animation plays, all harmful things cannot damage the player at all, which is a classic element in every fighting game or roguelike game, whatever. If the player dies, in this case, they empty the health bar, everything in the scene is destroyed, including the player, and then the game restarts. Another thing I created is the background color change when the player's health gets very low, which shows the warning not to die, and it kind of elevates the tension to be careful. Then I created a mechanic that whenever a player holds the spacebar while moving, the character runs 2 times faster than the normal speed. But be careful, because doing that will drain the health constantly and eventually the character will die. There is no indicator for that yet, so it's quite hard for players to realize if they are holding the spacebar or not, but I will make it later. I also wrote some code for the camera to change the orthographic size so that the whole scene can fit in the camera view. The best aspect ratio you can play in this game is larger than 4:3. I made a particle system that can be instantiated after the bullets smash into the wall or after they got destroyed by the bullets destroying gadgets. One of the things that I did not even know existed, particle collision, which is so amazing. So I messed around with it and holy moly, it worked so well. Did not really expect that to be that mesmerizing. I made some more visuals by creating floating text indicating how much the player gets healed or gets damaged. By the way, bullets from different enemies have different values of damaging the character. Then I made a red flashing effect showing that the player gets damaged by anything harmful. I have been working on this base gameplay scene for so long. The fact that I think it is already perfect leads to myself making basic UI for this scene and the main menu. I might make some challenges where players can get some achievements after finishing some missions. So let me think about how I will host the challenges. I need to take some time, and I just want to make a good time lapse of myself making stuff using my mouse and keyboard. Before going to sleep, I wanted to make some more stuff because there would be so much stuff that I had to do the next day, and I didn't want to make it unmanageable. I made a pause canvas and some stuff for the menu screen. I'm gonna go to sleep now. I'm tired. Here we are. Welcome to the toughest day, day 3. I started making as many achievements as possible for challenge mode. I sorted all of the challenges in several categories. Some of the achievements are not in the game because they usually can be achieved by just staying in one spot for a specific duration, so I got rid of that a few hours later. Anyway, I made a script that analyzes the critical information for challenges. In order to make a challenge mode, I have to create some basic UI so that the player can choose the challenges. Oh boy, even though I had a lot of stuff in my brain, that took me so much time. Despite the fact that there were not that many errors, it's just too much code to keep track. It's quite tiring for me to make a challenge UI, like the most simple UI in just a short time. But I'm glad that everything is going according to my plans. So it's time for me to have some lunch. After finishing lunch, coding like a maniac again, and procrastinating by T-posing, I finally finished making challenge mode and more. There is now a high score indicator below the score counter. If you die with your new best, the high score indicator will tell you that you have a new record. Remember, your score will not be saved if you exit the game before dying. The challenge mode now has a completed indicator to show you what challenges you have already completed. The game will ask you if you want to do the challenge, but you cannot retry it directly using the pause menu. Since the score of free play mode is no longer important for the challenge mode, I simply just disable it. If you want to see the progress you made during the challenge, just hold the tab key on your keyboard and you will see full detail and requirements to complete the challenge. If you die at any point, you will fail the challenge. If you complete the challenge without dying by the way, then you made it. Congratulations. At the point I was recording the screen, I found the challenges I made too difficult, so I tweaked more numbers so that the challenges can be suitable for players. Anyway, I finished making a settings screen and a credit screen. Now, at first I thought of making sprites for each challenge, but I got a better idea. Every challenge description now converts into logos with clear requirements to meet. It is a really good way for players to not get overwhelmed by the number of words in the description. With most of the visuals finished, I did something that I did not expect to do at all: making music. I gotta admit here, I kind of made some tracks before, but they did not really have the melodies. I wanted to challenge myself if I can produce some melodies for my tracks. Even if it's bad, it's better than making nothing. So I downloaded Bosca Soil. Okay, Bosca Soil. Oh, that was hard to read. Messed with some cheap tunes and other retro instruments for quite a long time because it was my first time using the application, and here is the result. Honestly, it was so much better than I anticipated. There are some of my own sound effects that are recycled from my first game on my itch.io profile, Plasm. GMTK allows everybody to reuse every asset that they own. Being happy about it, I decided to get some sleep and get enough energy for the final touches. It's the final day of the jam. I don't know why, but I suddenly want to change some stuff for the menu screen because the logos were not appealing at all. I mean, just looking at the messy pixels makes me puke already. Okay, let me do some magic here. Much better. Now, the challenge mode is already good, but I felt like it was missing something. Oh yeah, it was the reason why players can't retry the challenge from the pause menu. Although the retry button was disabled, players can quit the challenge and go back to the challenge, which is like pressing the retry button but with 2 steps. Therefore, I created a coin system where the players can collect coins by toggling the tick button in the free play mode. The number of collected coins is the same as the number of times you toggle the buttons, but if you get a high score, that number will be doubled. as a bonus. Moreover, players are allowed to play the challenges for 20 coins each. With everything finished, I built a test build to test the game, and I found the first bug in the menu screen.
Oh, okay.
Which is the tutorial. I built the test build again. I played the final challenge, which is the hardest one, and even though I lost, I felt like the difficulty was just right and it was very suitable for the final boss of the challenges. After seeing barely anything wrong in the tested version, I made a page of this game on itch.io so that I could submit to GMTK Game Jam 2025. Oh, by the way, the game's name is Togloop. And with that, the game was officially one of 2,331 entries as of the moment I submitted the game. You know what? Since I have 8 more hours until the jam ends, I'm gonna make one last thing to the animation of the camera. It's the feedback of the player destroying all bullets at once by touching the gadget. So let's do it, and after that, I'm gonna use my time to train my TOEIC reading skills. During that implementation process, I found a bad bug, which was the status of the player with low health not reverted back to normal. The bug fixing was complete, and I also made a camera shake animation after the player approaches the bullet destroying gadget, which is the feedback that I told you earlier. This small change makes a big impact on the gameplay. Because I finished fixing the bugs before the deadline, I could just replace the old file to a new file where hopefully no more bugs. I was so happy to see the finished game uploaded to the jam, and I could finally do many other things in my schedule for the rest of the day. One shocking thing about this jam is the number of submissions is so huge that the server has a lot of issues, which is why GMTK decided to extend the submission period. That is crazy. At the end of the day, the number of games submitted is just astonishing. This might be the biggest number of entries in the Game Jam history. That is insane. Well, have fun rating all the games because it is 1 a.m. in my country now. Because the jam ended, people are now allowed to play the games submitted to the jam and rate them. As of the moment I'm recording this right now, I don't really have much hope for the game's ranking, but there are so many things that I have improved after joining the jam. I knew what resources I already owned before. I wrote code a lot cleaner, more logical, and more organized. I had good time management, especially with a short time span of 4 days. By the way, the point of joining this game jam is to not be a grand winner or whatever. My main purpose is to challenge myself and to break my limit. To anybody who wants to join the jams, if you submit your game to the jam before the deadline, you are already a winner. Before ending this video, if you want to play and rate the game that I submitted, go ahead and click on the link in the description. And now I want to show 2 games that fit my taste the most out of all games that I have rated so far. The first one is Speed Loop. This is a platformer game where the character starts and finishes in the same starting position. Wait, this sounds so familiar, right? Anyway, every time you get to the finish line, you get to choose one of the 3 upgrades, which may benefit you but also may punish you because the time limit gets smaller and smaller for next levels. My best run is a time limit of 15 seconds. It's just impossible at this point. The second game is Goop Snake. The game is a super duper cute puzzle where your objective is to get the snake into a drain. Because the snake can gloop through itself, this fits the theme of the jam. You can eat some apples to increase the snake's length. You can also remove apples to reduce its length. Each level gets harder and harder, but after finishing a level, it is very satisfying to see it glooping into the drain with perfect sound design. Those were 2 outstanding games I have played in the jam so far. You can also play those games by clicking on the links in the description down below. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I hope you guys enjoy it and have a great day or night.
That's what I was looking for. Alright, that was fun. I gotta go. I gotta prepare to play some Pokemon Unite in a few minutes. My friend's waiting for me. Maybe we get 2 masters today. I'm really close. So yeah, thank you everyone. See you in a bit. If you want to you can subscribe or follow or whatever and get the notification when I go live. So yeah. Later, nerds.